Clara is a beautiful elephant smart girl. At her 24 years old, she's a law student who loves her studies, and her only dream is to succeed on her studies and travels to another country. But her parents and grandparents and her uncle and his son all don't want her to move on to another country alone. Especially her older cousin Damien. He's in deep love her, obsessed with her. He just loves her and wants her to be always with him. Today she decided to walk out tonight with her friends, but Damien stopped in front of the stairs looking at her dress. "Where are you going?" he said coldly. "No one of your business, Damien," she said with the same tone. He walked to her and grabbed her arm. "Yes, it's my business," he said with his deep voice. She looked at him. "What do you want?" she asked, annoyed. He looked at the short black dress she was wearing. "You are wearing that outside?" he said, clearly annoyed. She rolled her eyes. "Yeah, I do, and that's not your business." He pulled her closer. "No, you won't wear that outside." He was towering her with his big body. She stared up at him. "What? You want me to change now?" she asked sarcastically. He was silent for a moment, taking her in, looking at her body and at the dress and her long brown straight hair. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Are you crazy?" she said, trying to free her arm from his grip. But he didn't let her go, and he was still pulling her close to him. Clara smiled at her grandmother. "I'm going to go out with my friends," she said softly. Damien looked away and let her go. Grandma smiled. "At night alone, dear?" Clara nodded. "Don't worry, grandmother, we'll have fun." Grandma looked at Clara's dresses. "Don't you think your dress is a bit short, though?" Clara laughed, a little embarrassed. "Grandma, it's just a dress," she said softly. Grandma looked at her. "I mean, it's a bit inappropriate, don't you think?" she said. Damien was standing behind his grandmother, looking at the dress and at Clara's body with a pissed face. "No, it's not," Clara said, slightly annoyed. Grandma shook her head. "Well, it's not like you won't find anything else in your closet," Clara sighed. "I'm already running late." Damien was standing silently behind the grandma. He kept looking at her long legs and her body. Grandma looked up at them before nodding. "Okay, dear, but don't be so late. And please don't let her drink." Clara looked at her and rolled her eyes. "Okay, fine." Damien smirked, walking with Clara to the car and opened the door for her. Damien parked the car, took off his seatbelt and got out of the car and walked around to open the door for Clara and extended his hand for her to help her get out. She took his hand to get out of the car. The club wasn't that far. They could hear the music and see the girls in their sexy and glamorous outfits. Damien was walking with his hands in his pockets, watching the girls passing in front of them. And then he looked down at Clara's legs, seeing her thighs clearly because of the short black dress. They were sitting at the bar of the club. When they spotted Clara, they stood up. "Hey, there she is," one of them shouted, and they walked to her and looked at Damien behind her. "Who is this handsome guy?" one of them said teasingly. Clara laughed, shaking her head. "This is my cousin," she said. Damien came and stand next to her. He pulled her closer and wrapped his arm around her waist. The girls noticed the possessive way he was holding her. "Oh," "That's your cousin?" one of them said, and they looked at him and then at her. "Isn't that sweet?" Clara rolled her eyes. "Yep, this is my overprotective cousin," she said sarcastically. He smirked and hugged her closer against him, his hand going down and resting on her hip, his fingers just an inch away from her thigh. They were giggling between them. "Wow, he's hot," one of them said, and another one said, "I'm jealous of your cousin." They were all staring at him, but he was not noticing them. He didn't even look at them. His eyes focused on Clara. He smirked and pulled her closer. "That's not surprising. They're not the first and not the last ones to be attracted to me." She hit his chest. "You're so full of yourself." He was standing against the wall across from her, watching with a possessive gaze. A guy was approaching her and saying something. Damien clenched his jaw before walking to them. He came up behind them and placed a hand on her waist. He pushed her back until her back was pressed to his chest. The guy looked back and raised his hands. "Okay, dude, I'm sorry," he said to Damien. Damien's arm wrapped around her hip. "She's not free," he said in his deep baritone voice. She blushed, embarrassed that he said that out loud, in front of her friends and others. He pushed her against the wall and whispered in her ear, "Stop playing this little game. You enjoy it when I control you." Clara trembled, feeling his body and arms around her again and hearing his deep voice in her ear. He smirked, seeing her reaction. "Aren't you going to deny it?" he asked huskily. She swallowed, feeling the heat rise in her cheeks as his words sent a shiver down her spine. She was trying to hide her feelings, but it's getting harder and harder. She looked over at her friends, who were giggling with each other as they watched them. She knew they were taking in every little things he was saying and doing. He was taken aback for a second by her response. He pulled her closer against his body, his hands sliding up to her chin and tipping her head up to look up at him. "Say that again," he said, his voice lower. Her words were like music to his ears. He smirked and cupped her face in his large hand. "That's more like it," he said. He leaned closer and whispered in her ear, "You have no idea what I want to do with you right now." His voice was husky. He was reluctant to let her go, but he nodded and let her go. She grabbed his hand and started walking out of the club. He let her drag him through the crowd out into the fresh air. He was watching her as her hips swayed with every step she took. They walked slowly. He was listening to her talking, but he was also admiring her. This short black dress was driving him crazy. He couldn't take his eyes off her legs. He tried to focus on her words, but his mind kept getting distracted. She stopped and looked at him in surprise, her eyes wide and a blush creeping up her cheeks. Those three little words echoed in her head. She didn't expect to hear them from him tonight. She looked up at him. He was already looking at her. She didn't know what to say. She felt her heart skipping a beat. He took a step closer, closing the distance between them. His hand was still holding hers. He gently tugged so she was now pressed against him. She could feel his warm breath on her face. The heat of his body was intoxicating. He lifted a hand and brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, his fingers grazing her cheek gently. He looked into her eyes, his gaze intense and wanting. "Say you love me again." She felt a shiver down her spine. He looked so hot right now, and the way he was holding her and looking at her like that. She bit her bottom lip before speaking. "I love you," she said, her voice trembling a little. They were sitting on a bench under a large tree. He was holding her hand and looking at her with a soft smile. His thumb was tracing small circles on the back of her hand. She was looking at their hands and looked up at him. His gaze was so gentle and loving that it made her feel even more flustered and butterflies in her stomach.